Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rukus Reactions. Today I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter preview for Black Sonata, which is designed by John Keane and published by Side Room Games. Black Sonata is a solo hidden movement game where players run around the city of London chasing after Shakespeare's Dark Lady, trying to figure out who she is. This game won first place in a solo PMP competition on Board Game Geek about a year ago, which I was also involved in, and I felt this game absolutely deserved that honor. And it is now on Kickstarter, and they have upgraded a number of the components, including upgrading these tokens to screen printed wood, and these little wooden tokens to custom silhouette, as well as improving the quality and thickness of the cards, the board, the box, and everything. Now I'd like to start off by saying I'm not generally a fan of solo games. I don't like how the solo version of games is often shoehorned in. A lot of games are either far too luck-based with a lot of dice rolling, just hoping you'll get the right die results, or far too solvable whenever they're very strategy with no luck at all. But this game handles things a little bit differently than what I'm used to. I've been following this game since the very beginning, whenever the designer John Keane posted the challenge for himself, basically, to create a solo game that used hidden movement. And I have to say, of all of the solo games and of all the hidden movement games that I've ever played, I think this is probably the best in either category. One of the main aspects of how this game is handled is the hidden movement aspect. And this is really interesting. Basically, each of these cards has a symbol on the back, and those symbols coincide with locations on this map. Each of the locations on the map has one or more symbols, and the card that's on the top basically gives you a clue to the lady's current location. And you have to kind of move around through the city based on those clues, and you get these little hint markers, and you can put the hint markers down wherever you want to. So, for instance, the top symbol on this card is currently a cup. So, you find all of the locations on the map that have the cup, which are these two right here, and you could place a hint marker down on those two locations. That lets you help try and keep track of where she is currently. You don't know exactly which one of those locations she is located at the moment, but you know that she's at one of those two places. So you start following her path, and as she moves, sometimes she'll stay in the same location, sometimes she'll move to a location that is right next to where she is, and you can start following the clues, and eventually you'll usually wind up finding out exactly which location she is, because if, for instance, she moved from a place with a cup, which is one of these two, to a place with the drama masks on it, well, there's not one of those next to this location, but there is one of those next to this location. So now you know that she was here and she now has moved to here. And once you think you've figured out where she is, and you think that your location is the same location where she is, then the really interesting aspect of how this is handled comes into play. At this point, there's a deck of cards here that each have a hole in them, and they represent each of the cities on the board. You find the one that represents the location where you currently are, slip it underneath of the card that is currently on the top of this deck, which is called the Stealth deck, and then flip it over to reveal whether or not she's at that location. Basically, there's a magnifying glass here, and if her face is in the hole, then she's at the location where you are. If it's empty, then she's not. If you are at the same location where she is, then you can get a clue as to one of her traits. The traits are what are represented by these tokens. Each Dark Lady has 3 of these traits, and the way you find out her trait is essentially by finding traits of the people who she is not, and by being able to compare the traits of that person to the person that you're looking for. Each of the ladies has a different set of 3 traits, but they all share either 0, 1, or 2 in common with the person that you currently have. So for instance, I know that the Dark Lady that I've chosen has an acorn on the back of the card. So the first time I pull a clue, I take the top card from this deck, I flip it over, and I see the 3 attributes that this lady has. And I look for the acorn over here on this side, and it tells me how many of these 3 attributes the current lady that I'm looking for will have as well. So here I know that she either has a crown, a rattle, or a music note. Some of them say 0 or 2 of these traits. So you know that none of these are in common with her, or 2 of them. And that can be really helpful because maybe you know that 2 of these traits are definitely not something that she has. Then you know that, okay, well, it's none of them. Or maybe you know that one of these traits is absolutely something that she definitely has. And then you know that it's 2 of them. A lot of them generally say that they have 1 trait in common with the person, but as you go through here, you kind of get the ability to compare each item to each card and kind of start to dwindle down the number of choices. You can take one of these tokens and flip it over to the other side and set it down to show that you know for sure that that trait she absolutely does not have. As the game progresses, you have to try and find your way around this board and try and get to the locations where you think that she's going to be so that you can continue to search for more clues as to who she is. But every time that you search a location to see if that's where she is, you remove the card that you just looked at from the deck, so you will never be able to look at that step of her trek again, and you replace that with a fog card. Now these fog cards have actions on the back that you can choose to perform whenever they come up to the top of the deck, rather than moving or searching for the Dark Lady, since you can't actually search for the Dark Lady whenever this card is at the top of the deck. These cards do actions that could be really good for you or could actually be bad for you. Like for instance, this one says to advance the stealth deck by 2 cards. Now advancing the stealth deck is not a good thing because for one, it puts you closer to losing the game just by running out of time, because once she's circled this city 3 times, then she escapes and you will lose track of her forever. Also, if you're advancing the stealth deck by 2 cards, you're not actually allowed to look at any of the other cards that you're advancing. So, it can be easy to lose track of her. And this comes into the other aspect of searching for the Dark Lady, which is that every single time that you grab a clue card, which is what you need to figure out who she is, you also increase the number of times that you have to advance the stealth deck whenever you search for her. So at the beginning, she's just running a little bit faster, but you're able to keep track of where she's going. But every time that you search for her and you find her location, then when she runs away from you, she runs further and you lose the ability to keep track of where she's running to. Now, part of this can be solved when playing the game by just paying attention to the path that she's taken, because again, she'll take the same exact path through the city 3 times during the game. So paying attention to where she goes the first time she goes through the city can be really helpful in finding out where she's going to be the second time she goes through the city. I love this game. I love this game a lot. It is a really, really fun and satisfying strategy that is used to play the game. Technically, the only randomness is what fog card you're going to wind up putting in the deck, and you're supposed to cut the deck before you start playing so that her starting location is different every time you play the same track. But other than that, the randomness doesn't really affect your ability to win or lose the game. The replayability of this game, I think, is actually really high because of the fact that there are the 8 paths, and then you can go through those paths backwards. And then inside the rule book, there's actually a number of additional sequences that start from very easy sequences. You have easy sequences, moderate, and hard sequences, and each section has half of the paths that are there, there is no chance that she will be staying at her current location at any point 2 moves in a row. And then half of them, there will be times whenever she, instead of moving to a new location, stays at her current location. And I would say the chance of her staying at her current location definitely increases the difficulty a little bit more. But with all of these paths, if you just went through each of the paths and then you started over, the chance that you're actually going to remember what the game was like whenever you were playing this path the last time seems incredibly small. You'd have to play this game far more times than most people actually wind up playing any games just to get through them all once. Like I said, I really enjoyed this ever since the first time I played it, whenever it was much more of a prototype than even this version is. And it's really nice to see the way it's evolved. Like I said, this game is on Kickstarter. There's only a few days left. Please go now and back this game. It is an amazing game that totally deserves your money. And feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see y'all next time. Until then, Rukus rest.